Hi, everyone. Happy post-lunch session. It's great to see all of you in the room today. My name is Michael Preston. I'm joined here with 3 colleagues with whom we're collaborating on today's topic, Designing Tech for Wellbeing. To my left, I have Bruce Homer, Elizabeth Milovidov, and Natasha Miller. We're going to dispense with opening introductions, and you can learn about who we are by what we say today, and we're happy to talk to you after the session outside the room. But just to kind of set the stage here, we're talking about designing tech for kids' well-being. It's a world where we're all thinking about our well-being or lack thereof, and we're also thinking a lot about our digital experience. When so much of kids' experience today is digital, and kids don't even necessarily discriminate between their experience in digital and non-digital worlds, it's an opportunity for us to think about design. At the same time, we're very cognizant that a lot of the dialogue and what you hear, the narratives in the media, are focused on harms and risks and really important topics that we try to address and are fundamental to making sure that our digital experiences and kids' spaces are safe and secure. However, we're talking today about something a little different, which is what good looks like, what we hope for in digital spaces, what we want for kids. So this is a more aspirational view, which hopefully is why all of you showed up today. So we're grateful to have you here. 2 specific initiatives are among our discussion today. One is called RITEC, Responsible Innovation in Technology for Children, which was founded by the LEGO Group and UNICEF and supported by the LEGO Foundation. And another is called Digital Thriving, which is a partnership between us at the Joan, Ganz, Cooney Center and our friends at the Fair Play Alliance, a global coalition of game developers. And so you may hear some examples from those 2 initiatives today. Okay, so without further ado, who wants to be my first victim? All right, so Elizabeth, I'm going to start with you in the middle. See, you didn't see that one coming, did you? So Elizabeth, you have a role of senior corporate counsel at LEGO. You're also a digital child safety expert, and therefore interested in the policies and practices that help kids safe. So I'm curious to know about this sort of flipping the script, changing the narrative. Why are we talking today about well-being?
Okay, first, you really did get me because I thought you were going to go to Bruce. So I'm going to have to make something up. No, I'm just kidding. I could talk about this all day long because I absolutely love it. So I think what's really interesting is that I just became senior corporate counsel. So I am a lawyer from San Diego. So exciting to be here, but I live in London. I know, go. But I live in London and I've lived in Europe the past 28 years. So I'm just here for you. And really, it's all about digital child safety. And so at the LEGO Group, one of the things that I was doing was helping create principles about digital child rights and well-being. So what we did was we created these 5 principles, so that way we could have all of our LEGO employees, 24,000 people around the world, thinking about children's rights and well-being at every step with everything that we do, right? So what are the 5? So it's digital safety, digital empowerment, responsible digital play, things like monetization in games, digital privacy, which the LEGO Group is really excels at. You know, we don't like to collect any data. We really want to protect children's privacy rights. And then lastly is digital well-being. And ding, 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 enter the RITEC project, which is so cool because it is really kind of changing the whole narrative about how we talk about child online protection and digital safety, meaning that we're not trying to, bear with me, we're not trying to keep kids safe online, we're trying to build resilience. We're trying to help them have some skills for the future, right? Because this is what it's all about. Michael, I am sitting here just talking, having a good time, and I forgot your question.
So, you kind of answered it, I think, actually.
Did I?
So it's really about why are we talking about well-being today?
Oh, okay, yeah. So why are we talking about well-being? Just because of that, because it's so important. I mean, we all have seen children in the pandemic, right? 2-3 years. We've seen all of the horrible media. Everybody's always hearing about what's going wrong. And so it's time to look at how we can get it right. And digital well-being is the way that we can get it right, because let's face it, the digital experiences are here. They're going to continue, whether we're talking Chat GPT, as Michael and I were talking about walking over. So we have to do better this time. We have to find a way to actually make sure that anyone, not just children, but that anyone, as they're using technology, they're having digital experiences and engagements, that they feel better when they turn their screen off, that they feel better after they've swiped a few times. And so that's what this project does. Okay, mic drop.
Woo! Thank you so much, Elizabeth. That was a great start to our session. Bruce, I'm just going to mix it up here. You'll never know. So you're a child psychologist. You study kids' experience online. I mean, this is kind of a funny question, but why is it important for us to ask children what they think about well-being?
Wait, we should, no. We have, if we really want to understand kids, you got to talk to them. And it's one thing to have our own adult theories of this is what you should be like. But especially thinking about additional context, it's important to ask the kids why they're playing. You know, they're spending a lot of time on playing video games and doing stuff online. It's, you know, there's a reason for that. And so we actually, with the first phase of the project, went through and talked to hundreds of kids and about their digital experiences, what well-being means to them in the context of that, and came up with a framework that's available. And then we couple this still with our theory that we have from psychology, from doing, you know, decades of centuries of research on children, to say, oh, okay, so they're really what the kids are talking about here, we would frame that as autonomy or connectedness. You know, they say, oh, I like to meet my friends online, and say, okay, we know that, like in self-determination theory, they have three big components that drive why we do things, and it really applies to games, and it's autonomy, connectedness, and the other one. Autonomy, competency. And so, you know, we see the kids using their own language to describe that, and it helps us understand what they're doing. And then we use this to guide our design principles to say, what are the kids actually doing with it? So, you know, when we started doing research on this, we thought, oh, here's some games that we think kids would really get some of these skills and experiences which would help their well-being. But we had the kids play it, and sometimes they did what we thought, and sometimes they didn't. They do their own thing. You know, and that's part of the joy and beauty of working with children is even if you've been working with them for a long time, which I have, they still surprise you. So you need to involve the kids in all processes of this, all parts of it, get their voices involved into it. What is well-being? What is play? What is fun? What, you know, and that's the only way it's going to be meaningful and useful.
Thank you, Bruce. All right, Natasha. So you're a game designer and you're a research scientist, not necessarily in that order, and you play games. And my question for you is about this conversation about flipping the script. You work on games that are played by multitudes. How does this kind of idea show up in your work?
Yeah, when you're talking about designing tech, games is going to inevitably come up because over 3 billion people on Earth are playing games right now, and that is of all ages. And games are becoming more and more the place where people are going to be social and to interact with other people, especially we saw during the pandemic where people weren't leaving their houses and these were spaces where they were going. So we want to make sure that we're being responsible in those spaces for kids, but for other ages too. So I'm here both from the Fair Play Alliance and our collaboration, but also at Blizzard where our games are not necessarily targeted at kids, but we want to make sure that we're designing for well-being for all ages. Like we don't want to, you know, leave out the adults. That wouldn't be very nice of us. Pretty exclusive. So I think games are a very rich medium for this. I mean, you have these social interactions, you have transactions, you have an environment that's fully curated to the player's experience, the user's experience, and it becomes not only where you can test all of these different things, but where you can really accurately measure it as well and see how you're doing. Because We know that behavior is a function of a person in their environment. And with games, we own that environment. We own every aspect of that environment. And so we can really start to test some of these theories and principles that are coming out. And if we put them into place, is it making a difference for our players' lives? It becomes a very rich medium for all of this and to be the testing ground for all of this. And it's very important with more and more people on Earth actually coming to these spaces now and being in them together. And we want them to be together safely and well and inclusively.
Thank you. So I'm going to go back to you, Bruce. So Bruce is one of the researchers working on the RITEC initiative I mentioned earlier. The first phase of that work concluded last spring with a published report on the UNICEF website, if you choose to read it, that is grounded in global voices of kids to help define well-being in their own words. It's subjective research talking to about 300 kids in 13 countries, many of which are non-Western and less represented in the research, as well as secondary research on existing data sets. So there's a very thorough effort by UNICEF and our friends at the Young and Resilient Research Center. Now we're in phase 2, and there's work happening in the field to see how these items in the framework, which Bruce alluded to earlier, are showing up in kids' digital gameplay. So it's still early, and I know researchers don't like to talk about their work when it's still early. It's not like eating the chocolate chip cookies before they're fully baked, which is very rewarding. You have to wait. But nevertheless, could you give us in the audience some kind of early findings or some promising ideas that you think might one day attain the level of insights or recommendations?
Yeah, so I'll just mention briefly, there's sort of 3 main parts of the project. One is an ethnographic study where our colleagues in the UK are actually going in and watching kids use digital play in their homes, and that data is still being collected. Another, which is happening in Australia, is they're looking at biological indicators of well-being while the kids are playing together and alone. So I'm not going to talk about those 2 studies because they're still happening, and I'll talk about our part, which is experimental work. So we've chose games, we had kids play it, we've run the study in New Jersey, and very preliminary results showing that the kids who had lower well-being entering into this after-school digital play program showed gains in well-being and using external standard measure of well-being, which is kind of exciting. So it really seems to be helping these kids, and it was along the measures that we talked about before. Some of the surprising findings actually I'm a quantitative experimenter by training, so I'm used to giving surveys and writing down numbers, but some of the more qualitative work actually surprised me. We observed that the kids, even though they all had their own iPad, insisted on playing together. And so this kind of defies the, kids sitting alone in the basement playing video games. They would even if they all had their own iPad, they would say, let's all play the same game, or they would sit down on the floor together and share and play together. So for the kids, it is a social activity. And so one of the recommendations I say that comes out of this is make it social. Think about the age of the child, what would be age-appropriate social, but they want to share. This is hardwired into what it means to be human, is to be social and interacting, and they want to do this, and it's part of what they're doing with the game. So to facilitate that would be one. Second thing that came out from the parent survey that's accompanying this work is parents want to play with their kids, and we know from actually early work from Sesame Street and Children's Television Workshop that educational benefits really come out when you have intergenerational play or viewing or using of educational materials. So if you can think about designing games that allow parents to play with their kids and both have fun, I think that would be another strong recommendation that comes out of this.
There was we made this we were trying to find the third item before competence, and I always found it interesting that kids often talked about games as a place where they felt they could enhance their mastery and practice something, get good at something. And when we talk about kids, obviously they're not a monolith. Their kids are diverse in all kinds of ways, and there's also the developmental trajectory. And so the games they play and the experience that they have playing games changes a lot. I was curious to know how you saw some of that in the research as well, if you have any examples.
Of how it was changing?
Yeah, or descriptions back to you.
Yeah, we found some interesting differences. Even though our age range was pretty low, 8 to 12-year-old, there were certain games that the 8-year-olds wanted to play, and others that the 8-year-olds was too hard and the 12-year-olds only wanted to play. We also found that we're doing this in a couple of other sites, and you see almost like a gaming culture developing in these different sites where the kids, for some reason or another, all get into one of the games or the other. So that it's depending on the age, it's depending on what just the kids at that site are into and what they want to play. And it's the games that have this sort of continuing challenge that I think they keep coming back to and want to keep playing and challenging each other too.
That's exciting. Thank you. So, Elizabeth, another phase of this work will be eventual adoption by game companies that taking the lessons from this initiative. And I was curious to know, again, it's too early to predict, but how does this work show up for the LEGO Group and the games that you make now?
Yeah, so what's really cool is Bruce was just talking about phase 2, and I get phase 3. So there's 4 phases. What is so exciting about this phase 3 is taking in the learnings, which are some of the things that you see, these little cards that we passed out. So these are what we call the RITEC 8, right? So these are the positive aspects that we're looking for that we know, based on Bruce's research, will help children thrive, right? And will help their digital well-being. So what I've been doing is working with our different designers who are in what we have a creative play lab, we have a games division. Actually, it's now called Games, Activation, and Metaverse Experiences because, the LEGO Group is going there. And so there is also another department, which is the digital consumer engagement. And so what I've been doing is running around the LEGO Group and having little workshops with all of these designers and really showing them what these 8 outputs look like. I am not a scientists like Bruce to sit there and say this is exactly what it is, and so I've been asking them, how can you see this? What can we do? What can you do in your department, in your projects, in your initiatives to bring the RITEC 8 alive in what you're doing? And what's so cool is that they've been really stepping up to the plate. So we were in South by Southwest in Houston a few weeks ago. I'm in like a jet laggy thing, I don't know. And what was so awesome is that we had somebody come in, and the LEGO Group has building instructions. I bet you didn't know. There's an app, it's called LEGO Builder. You can go download it, and you can build different builds, different things with a group of people, and each has a different set of building instructions. Well, the woman who works on the team for building instructions took the RITEC 8, and she was able to track out how every time in the building instructions, it helps prove competency, it helps with connectivity, it helps with self-empowerment, it helps with self-actualization. I mean, it was just truly awesome. So and no, I'm not going to start singing the song or anything like that. So they started off doing the 8 in the different departments. We are going to see then how we can take that out to other companies once we have best practices to truly show and say, look, this is the LEGO way, we've nailed it. It's not me who's building it, so I'm just cheering them on. Then we're going to really hopefully share this with other companies who want to do things the right way, where we're not doing so many things where we're trying to get children to like or to share or any of those things, but we're trying to make sure that they thrive, that they feel better, that they have the competencies, that they have the digital citizenship skills. I hate saying that word, so I'll just say empowerment. And it just leads me to sort of one question, though, that's just kind of begging as I sit here and look at the faces. How many of you are in any sort of design field? That's why you were nodding. Okay, and I see all of you, this is smiley people. Okay, you were all designers. Got it. Okay, thank you.
Thanks for that. Okay, so Natasha, so you're working on the Digital Thriving Initiative with other colleagues from other game studios, and what I find inspiring about the work that you're engaged in at the Fair Play Alliance is the effort to figure out how to do this work. That, it's one thing for a company that has deep expertise in working with kids and humans in general to ensure that there's a positive experience at the other end. And in some of the work that some of the bigger game companies do, that's not always the association the public makes with that work. And at the same time, you're representing a kind of design that is very focused on the social infrastructure of games and player experience for individuals, for groups, et cetera. So I was trying to imagine what, if you could maybe give us an example of what getting to how looks like for you.
Yes. So we were at the Fair Play Alliance, and a while back we put out the Disruption and Harms in Online Gaming framework, and we realized that there was a need to look at the other side of it, the framework for pro-social design or digital thriving design. And so we started having these conversations, and we were thinking about putting out another framework, but we were worried about adoption, and we had so much research between us that we were like, if we want to get to the how, we need a playbook. So something similar to the old design playbooks that used to exist for UX design and stuff, but this is going to be the design playbook for digital thriving, and we announced it earlier. And this will be a literal book of plays so that you can go and see a play and be able to just grok and go. That's what we've been saying. You should be able to look at it and grok and go with it and go design. So that's our goal. And so we announced that we are doing this. We have a bunch of research put together, but we also wanted to make sure that we were hitting all aspects of design, not necessarily just game design. So we've been putting a call out for play makers to come and help us make plays, participate in some of our workshops and things. And we have been getting that from different fields because we do feel like they're all interconnected and can help. So an example of one of the plays that I worked on is designing for empathy. And empathy is something that becomes really important at all ages, and something that is taught by parents, teachers, all kinds of people that could actually bring about this work. And I actually took inspiration from how teachers teach empathy to their students. That's where a lot of the background research for that play came from. And by looking at how they do that through media like books and different things and all the papers put out there, we ended up coming out with the play for gamers, where we talk for game developers, not the players, to look at connecting to a different perspective than the majority of your player base. Look at connecting on very strong emotions, positive or negative, and look at connecting to very tough situations, different than what they might be in. Right, and then they can take those ideas, those lessons, and how you bring that about, combine that with examples. So there's a game called Wayward Strand that gives you the perspective of being in a nursing home and connecting with elderly people. A lot of people are gamers now. They're not as young as they used to be, but most of them aren't nursing home old yet. So, I'm pretty sure that's a different perspective. We looked at games that connect to very strong, positive emotions. Like Overwatch is a game that's very hopeful about the future after war has happened and everything, and can bring that sense of hope and that aspiration. And we looked at games that connect to negative emotions, going through like a tragedy, like that. That Dragon Cancer is a game that puts you in the perspective of a parent with a young child going through cancer, and it lets you connect, and it drives empathy for people going through the same thing in the real world or for the elderly. And all of that play that then you can just now take and look at how to apply in your different digital environments came from teaching material. So we are putting together these plays based on all of the research available to us, whether in games or not, and looking for playmakers. So if you want to be a playmaker, let me know, or just go to fairplayalliance.org/digital-thriving, or just come ask me. And you can sign up to be a playmaker. But we have many, many of these plays now. We have about 40 plays that we've put together, from everything from encouraging harmony to welcoming strangers into a new group. And we are going to be running workshops all summer, hoping to have a friends and family version of the playbook out later this year. So our design playbook for digital thriving is the how, and it's very much research-backed. And I do have to shout out my other research colleagues on it. So it's myself, West Hart, who's the head of player dynamics at RITEC Games, and Kimberly Voll, who is the head of studio at Brace Yourself Games. We're all part of the Fair Play Alliance, collaborating with the Joan Ganz Cooney Center on this project, and we're very, very excited about it. So hopefully that's going to help people get to the how.
Could you say a few more words about the player dynamics universe? When we started working together, this was a new concept for me. What is it? Bless you. What does the role mean? How do you define it? Is it a widely adopted idea within game studios?
So more people are doing it than realize they're doing it. It's sort of a newer term because people haven't focused on it as much as they are lately, but it comes from social dynamics design, where now that games are evolving from being just like a single player experience where you go through to having multiple people in, the designs need to be multi-minded as well. They need to account for that, for the different kinds of people that's going to be there from the different places. They're very global at this point. And so player dynamics is the idea of how do you design in a way that's multi-minded, designing for all of the minds that are coming together and the ways that they'll come together and the ways that they can interact and all of the affordances that you give them to do so, and preparing for them to have the best of human collaboration, right? You can literally save worlds together in games. It is the best collaboration. But you also have to mitigate the risk that also comes with when you put people together and allow them to talk to each other. It's not always the nicest things that they say. And so player dynamics is the idea of designing for all of this to help mitigate the bad and really encourage the good, encourage them to make friends. We've heard story after story of how people came to games and became friends forever, or they became partners and got married. And so it can be the best of the best. And if you're designing for it, you can really, really achieve it in a much more direct way.
It's interesting. Thank you for that. It's interesting to think too about how in the research with children, they identified being in safe spaces, enabling them to be creative and to have the kinds of social relationships they had. Which at a time of growing up in a complicated world, having those experiences and safe spaces was really important, so that they could achieve the well-being outcomes that we talk about in the RITEC initiative, for example. So let's forecast a little bit in the future. I think we started off by talking about what good looks like, and we are interested in a future state in which well-being is an accepted reality that is designed for kids' digital experience of all kinds. We're focusing on games today because that is the bread and butter of a lot of our partners. It's also a space that has a long history, 3 billion people playing games globally, including lots of kids. And so what are we hoping for? We have a lot of potential here. It's still early, maybe in some of the work we're doing, but what if we're forecasting, what do we hope for 10 years from now? Who would like to go first?
I'll take this one. I haven't gone first yet. So for me, I think that a lot of work is being done in spaces that are very intentionally being designed for children and kids at this time. And I would love to see us be able to take that work into the other spaces that aren't necessarily designed intentionally for kids, but that they're going to end up in, right? They're not going to stay in those worlds forever. They're going to get older, and they're going to need to transition to these other spaces. And we need to make sure that those spaces are designed for everyone's well-being as well. So I think that we're going to see the focus of bringing those principles into things that are designed, our digital environments designed, not just specifically for kids in mind. I hope so.
For me, just as you were talking, Natasha, thank you. It gave me time to think of something, because it's such a difficult question, and I don't know which hat to answer it with the Lego group hat, or just really kind of how I'm feeling. So I'm going to do a mix of both. In that I feel that we have to learn from the history. We have to learn from the past. We have gotten so many things wrong with internet and social media and online games, and just, I won't say going so fast, but we kind of went really fast. And I think we need to slow things down a little bit, just to truly understand the impact, and to make sure that we are really always using this sort of well-being by design. I mean, it's absolutely crazy to think that we don't have that yet, really. We have privacy by design, safety by design, that we had to invent all of these things. And I think that we, as developers, as lawyers, as educators, as parents, that we have to just go faster with the people that are actually designing. So I think that the future is looking good. I'm not going to be pessimistic, but I think that more of us have to step up.
For me, I think that you've already alluded this in your intro, Michael, that we're blending for kids the digital and physical worlds, and that's going to keep continuing. Their lives are going to seamlessly shift between these media, so that they won't even be able to tell the difference. So I think we have to design for that. I also would like to see us have systems that are able to monitor kids and detect when they need some help, and say, hey, you seem to be a little down. Why don't you try playing some of this? And use games in ways that can intervene to help kids with their general well-being. And there's no reason. We're close to having some idea now how you would actually be able to do that by looking at their behaviors, and with the advances in AI and being more immersive in the environments, I think that the abilities to do assessments and make fun recommendations that would help kids, that will be within 10 years. But we need research.
We can sign up here at the end of the session, yeah. All right, so we have a few minutes left. I was maybe thinking we would invite you all to ask some questions. Would anyone like to ask a question before yeah, well, it looks like we have at least one hand raised. And while she gets ready to ask her question, others can consider what they might ask.
I also want to say that I'm really excited about their research, because it means that all the gaming sessions I have with my daughter actually does have positive impact on her well-being. So as a parent, super excited to hear that, made the right choices.
Yeah, and I would also say too that now that you're scared to ask the question because you have to walk all the way up here, I saw you.
It's a very welcoming aisle here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Come forward.
I'm giving you time. Is that I would love it, and this is a true invitation for me. Please reach out. If you have heard of stories or best practices, or there's something else that's going on, we need to know. I mean, this is the time where we're trying to create this stuff. So, we're all in this together. And without sounding all crazy, it does take a digital community to raise a digital child. So we're counting on all of you.
So that's the perfect segue to my question.
Because
I have a two-part. So the first part is we're talking about kids and we're talking about building a village. How do y'all tackle parents who are so behind in the technical learning, right? And to your framing earlier of we're moving really fast, we need to slow down the pace. How do we also slow down the pace for that intergenerational learning happening at home, but when we don't actually control the sector, so there are things that are happening really fast, even if we were slowing it down for the kids? So that's my question.
Okay, I'm going to take that one, Michael.
Yes, go,
Okay.
please.
At the Lego Group, we do have something called Build and Talk, which is a way for parents and families to, build and talk, right? And so, I know, isn't that a clever name? But the idea here, and this is the idea for any sort of parenting in the digital age, is that really parents, myself included, we are not going to get it. There's too much technology. There are too many things happening too quickly. So the idea here is that we're not teaching our children how to understand all of the features of Snapchat or TikTok, or to understand every single thing in Fortnite or Minecraft. Sorry, I'm not naming any of yours because, my children are younger. But when we're talking about things like that, we're not going to teach to the specifics. You have to teach to something bigger, which is, again, sort of these RITEC outputs of teaching your children how to feel competent, how to self-regulate. This is what all parents, we do this naturally. We do this already with our children, and it's just because we start hearing things like digital that we lose it. So let me give you an example. I've had parents talk to me saying, oh my gosh, cyberbullying, my kid's being cyberbullied, or my child saw child pornography, not child pornography, good gracious. My child saw online pornography, what do I do? And I say, take the tech out. Instead of thinking online pornography, what do you do if you found Playboy or Playgirl magazines under the bed? What are you going to do? Parent, you're going to figure some things out, and it's the same thing that we're dealing with now. And the only way we can get parents all on board to these type of RITEC-y well-being ways is awareness, communication, sharing, being a community. It's the same way when we had our children and we were like, oh, what's the first food that we're going to give them? Should it be, I don't know, cake or perhaps carrots, right? Duh. But you would still ask someone, because you weren't quite sure. And we have to keep asking, and we have to help each other, because we're not going to get it right unless we do.
I would say from the developer point of view that you can still take some of these intentional design plays into account. So when we were at South by Southwest, Bruce's colleague was there, and he talked about some of their findings as well. And he mentioned that parents don't always want to play with their kids because the skill level is so vastly different, and they don't want to just smoke their kid, right? So the first thing I thought about when I was hearing about that research and that quote was you could design to make the game acceptable for both parties so that they really could play together and neither one sacrificed. And a really good example, the first thing I thought of was Mario Kart, because I actually play this with my toddler, because they have designed it to where per controller you can actually change the controls. So on mine, I can have it just a straight game so that I have to have all the skill to continue through, and then we can play the same map together, and I can set her controller up to where she doesn't have to press gas, it just goes straight for her. It gives her invisible bumpers that aren't there for me, so I don't have to lose that skill point, right? And she can basically just put down her controller and grab some goldfish and it'll drive itself while I'm having my like really strict race. And we're enjoying the activity together and we're playing together, and it was a very intentional design choice that they made that accounts for some of that and allows parents and kids to play together. And if you have an older kid and maybe you're not a gamer, you could go the opposite. Yours could be the one with invisible bumpers and you don't have to press the gas button, and your kid could be have the not any of that and have to put in more skill points, and it still works. So even just design choices like that that allow them to play together better could make a difference from the developer point of view as well.
In your story, Natasha, I'm the one who needs the easy mode so that my kids don't destroy me in the games they play. I have older kids. But, and I think the one more comment I'd like to make is that Sesame Street, as folks are familiar, was founded in this principle of co-viewing, where kids and parents would have a shared experience in front of the TV show. And even when it was off, the content continued through dialogue between parents and kids. And that's a premise, I think, that is interesting to extrapolate in these new media environments where you can experience media together, you can deeply understand what they're doing. Obviously, it's impossible to become expert, but you can at least continue to parent, like you said, Elizabeth, and have meaningful conversations with your kids about how to stay safe and secure, how to be positive, how to treat others with respect and empathy. So it's not that different really, but it does require like a level of a commitment and attention that I think is.
Yeah, and I just have one more comment on that, Michael, because you made me think of one last thing, back to your question, which is this whole idea of, how do we teach parents? And I think that if we sit there and we tell parents that as you teach your child to cross a street, you teach them how to cross the street, right? Yeah. Afterwards, they're able to cross a bigger street with red lights, a highway. Now we're doing, as we're building digital experiences, these are super fast highways, but because we've instilled our children with the basics of how to cross the street, we don't have to know what highway they're going on. We know that they're going to do it well. And that's what we're trying to do in the digital age.
In like 5 seconds, I'll just say, for younger kids, yeah, you can co-play, and the older kids realize that it's something that's that important to them. Figure out why, ask them about it. It doesn't, I have 2 teenage daughters that were into some stuff I liked, some stuff I didn't like, but if it was important to them, I would talk to them about it and find out about it, and that's part of being a parent. The other thing I'll add is we're getting to the stage now where the teachers that I work with in schools and the parents that I have coming into my lab are gamers themselves, so they grew up with, there are some who are not, but it's been a whole shift. When I first started doing research in schools, the teachers would be like, oh, games are evil, and now the teacher's like, oh, awesome, what games do you got? So I think we're going to see a shift and a more positive attitude, and just for everything, just keep talking to those kids.
Yes, Pierre.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what you think about the reward system in games. And I think in the 5 pillars, I think there was a little bit of a worry about the fact that we are breeding the kids to want to spend money, and there's a bit of demonization of that, and yet, if it's learn to earn, it's the best reward system to motivate the kids to get to the next level. So how do you balance that?
Can I say one thing before we switch? Could we switch the slide to the last slide? Before we take Pierre's question. So please, if you're interested in learning more or giving us some feedback, please just scan that code and let us know. We have about a minute and a half left, so let's take a quick stab at this question, and then any other conversation let's have outside. And please take the cards with you or come find us outside. Okay, reward systems.
Super quickly, so yeah, monetization is covered in our responsible play pillar, and games, we have something that's called a responsible gaming framework, where we actually go through and look at all the different features. Monetization, of course, is one of them. And you are so right. It is really difficult because at the Lego group, we do not want the children to feel that they have to keep paying to level up. And we have to try to find that balance of having an educational leveling up, a sort of getting that reward, because it is exciting to want to continue, but to also know when to shut down. I would say right now, for the most part, we've gotten it right. But I think, as Natasha might say, our games are not like Blizzard. You don't see those millions of people on them, and so we're working on that.
Yeah, so there is a whole team at Blizzard that talks about ethical monetization and what that looks like and how that looks. And again, our games aren't actually targeted specifically to children, so ethical for us is probably different than if you are designing a space specifically for kids. I'm not going to go too deep into it because I'm not on that team, but I do know that that is conversations that happen. A lot of thought gets put into it, and it is a conversation that if it's not happening and your company does have monetization, it probably should be happening. But we have 2 seconds left, so I'm going to stop.
Sounds like a play.
It does sound like a play. All right, thanks everybody. It was a
Thank
pleasure
you.
having you here.